निरञ्जनं नित्यम् अनन्तरूपम् भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमिड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः। जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रुत्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चिद्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So the last class on our Karma Yoga, we deviated a bit and we took up the chapter, the paper on Hinduism. In the very first volume of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, in the section, the Parliament of Religions, we find that this is one of the very, very significant lectures of Swami Vivekananda. Actually, it is a paper on Hinduism which Swamiji read in the Parliament of Religions. And we took some portion of that lecture to discuss the Hindu tenets about the tenets of the Hinduism as far as the soul, its nature and its destiny is concerned. And we have already seen that Swami Vivekananda was having in the background of his mind the Abrahamic religions and as well as the modern science. This too he was having in his background, that what's their viewpoint about the creation and specifically about the human beings and their destiny as per the transmigration is concerned, whether the other religions believe in it or not, or as per the as per the biological science, the transmission of the genes as if explains everything, the reductionist theory. So all those things was in the background of his mind, and in a nice way, he, from the very beginning we find he was synthesizing all the views to express the view of Vedanta. So we will see that we have already discussed that when Swami Vivekananda was delivering the lecture, in the background of his mind, there is the four ideas mainly were there: the biblical doctrine of creation, biblical concept of original sin, biological concept of origin of life, and the biological concept of inheritance. So these are the four ideas which was in the background of his mind. And as per the biblical doctrine, we have already studied that God created. Even each and every soul was created by God. But once it has been created, there is no annihilation. So we are not anadi in the Vedic term, as per the Vedantic terminology is concerned, that if we try to understand the biblical concept, that we are not anadi. We had an adi. We were created, but we are ananta. We are going to live forever. So here, at the very beginning, we find Swami Vivekananda, to propound the Vedic view, is contradicting the idea that there is creation of the soul. He's saying that if you are having any thing which is created, if there is any creation, it is bound to be annihilated. Because creation means the combination of some favorable circumstances to lead to the creation. Now, if those favorable circumstances are no more there, all the factors which integrated to create it, that is bound to disintegrate. So anything which is created is bound to disintegrate. The thing which is not Anadi cannot be Ananta. So, from the Vedic point of view, from the Vedanta's point of view, the soul is Anadi as well as Ananta. It was, it is, it will be. Throughout eternity, it was, it is, it will be. So, that's the first thing Swami Vivekananda brings into uh, our, is he highlights, brings into our notice. And the very second point, which he says that the moment we attribute the creation to God, then however we may try to explain the imperfections in life, we will find at last it has to be attributed to the divine alone. That you have to attribute all the imperfections to the, if he has created, then ultimately for all our imperfections, our sins, the God is responsible. And we find that there are many stories, the biblical story of the origin of the sin, that how the sin happened because of the transgression of the God's dictum, and that we are actually uh, inheriting that spiritual and psycho. That's what you say, that the sin, the original sin, is being inherited, and it is something even a newborn, an innocent baby who is born has inherited that. So we will find that we somehow God, you have to attribute the imperfections in the God's creation itself. So here again, Swamiji says, when I say that the soul is Anadi as well as Ananta, then the responsibility no more lies with the divine. Responsibility is now with me. I am responsible for the actions which I do. And out of ignorance, whatever actions I have done, that is resulting birth after birth, means the results of the previous actions has resulted in the new birth. And that's how we can explain that in this life we can find a lot of polarities, that some are born with all the uh, luxuries of life and some are born miserable. So who is responsible for that? So here Vedanta, the Vedic view, comes to the picture by saying that in our past birth, whatever actions we have done, the results we have accrued in the present birth. And now again we find the biological concept of transmigration, the genetical transmigration comes into picture to say that there is nothing called soul which is transmigrating. That we have studied, that we were just discussing in the last class, that it is just the genetic transmission which happens, and all the traits which we develop is only because of the genetic transmission. Now we will find Swami Vivekananda too contradict this view, is synthesizing the biblical concept as well as the biological concept to highlight the Vedantic concept. What it is saying, that we need not be idealistic to think that the entire creation happened out of God or out of consciousness. Neither we take into the view of the science by thinking that consciousness evolved as an epiphenomenon because of the conglomeration of matter. It's an accidental product of the conglomeration of matter. We need not take into that view also. He's saying that the mind and the consciousness as well as the nature, they're as if going in parallel lines. He's saying that as per our tendencies, it is we who choose a particular body. Yes, certain traits are inherited because of the biological transmission, but again, it is we who are tuned to that particular type of body, are just prevail over that body, and that's how this too, the this the mind which is transmitted to the mind and the body, these two come into picture together. And as in the last class we found that there is a lot of objections, that how can something enter into the body? If we try to understand that way, it's really very difficult to understand. In the modern days, because of the advancement of the science, to understand the transmigration has become very easy. Just the way our internet works, just the way your television works. Nothing is entering into your TV. When your TV is damaged, you purchase a new TV, you just tune to the channel which you were viewing previously, immediately the same picture comes to your vicinity. So what's so the mind is something non-local. It's just like the transmission. And there are a lot of biological findings in the present day which actually ascribes to that it is something like a transmission, and that the body to which we are attuned, we take birth in that. We gave a common example that there may be innumerable vasanas, the latent impressions, which are known as the vasanas in our mind. All need not find expression in a particular birth. As per the particular birth is concerned, all those vasanas which are suitable for that birth, they only find expression. Others remain hidden in the subconscious mind, not to find expression in the present birth, maybe in future birth, when those vasanas which didn't find expression in this birth, they find several circumstances, they will again manifest. And to give a common example, in the last class we were giving that example, that suppose a student is good in all the subjects, that how we can understand that process of transmigration. A student is good in all the subjects, and when he gets chance, suppose in the medical college because of good grades, now he or she was interested in all the subjects, was good in all the subjects, and had quite equal interest in all of them. But the moment he gets chance in the medical college, he or she gets chance, now only the interest in the biological sciences that finds manifestation, that's manifests. The others gets shadowed, because now his jati, what's the species? He's a medical student. For certain years, 4 years, 7 years, whatever it may be, he is going to be a medical student. And all the experiences, if he was a really good, with all his talent he has got there, with full skills, he will easily pass through. If somehow he managed to get into the medical college, he or she will be struggling. So experiences are not same. When you get into a particular jati, particular species, it may be different as per my skills, my capabilities, which I have accrued previously. So now you will find that it becomes easy to understand that as a medical student, though the student's interest was there in all the subjects, the moment he or she gets admitted to the medical college, then what happens? Only the interest in the biological science that finds prevalence. The others are now in the subconscious mind. In the future, when already he or she is established as a quite reputed doctor, and he or she has some leisure, now again, most probably the love for music as a student, that again manifests. Now in the later life, again, he or she may just get more and more interested in that pursuing the interest in their music. So you will find that this explains, this type of example explains that how that particular circumstance, like the medical college, that was not created by the tendencies of the student. It is the product of the collective, of the entire society. It is a collective consciousness that has created that medical college. The tendencies of that student took him there, and accordingly it manifested. So in a wonderful way, we will find the Veda, the Vedanta has propounded this theory of transmigration, where the biological transmission is not denied, as well as the concept that we are the soul, that also is not denied. Both are synthesized, and it gives a wonderful way of understanding the process of transmigration. So that we were studying in the last class, that why we don't remember the past, because as per the present birth, there are many tendencies which are in my subconscious mind. They're not favorable for this birth. So naturally, they're not finding expression. But if I try, if I can calm down the mind, the past also can be remembered, that we were studying in the last class, that if you can calm down the mind in your day-to-day life. To give an example, nowadays there are these processes to regress to the past, even to the previous birth. You will find even various channels, the TV channels are just dedicated for this type of programs. We need not just think them to be something just without any what you say, that some fraud or something maybe. But there is a reason, that it is a fact. Actually, it's not that everything is fraud. Why? The reason, even in with our common understanding, we can understand that it is something possible in our day-to-day life. You will find that when I'm extremely busy in the morning, the housewife is extremely busy. Most probably, she has to prepare the meal for the child who is going to school, for the husband who is going for the work. And if she works, then that immediate concerns are still more something focused. At that time, it is impossible for her to remember anything else apart from being in the present. In the afternoon or in the evening, when she is in she is a bit leisurely, then you will find that whenever we are leisurely, then our mind as if expands. Now the past comes into picture, my anticipation that what will happen to my future, the concerns about the future, all those comes into picture. When I'm in immediate need of something, then it's not possible. So that happens in our life. We are so engrossed with the life, the present life, we are so engrossed that it is almost impossible to remember the past. And if that's why the yoga says that if we can calm down the mind, we can see the purva sanskaras, all the hidden sanskaras, and that can uh, enable to even remember the past birth. That we have seen even in the one of the what you say, that the yoga sutras, that one of the sutra is there, which we studied in the last class, that samskara shakshat karanat purva jati jnanam. So we can see the samskaras by calming down the mind, and even the past birth becomes something palpably visible. You will that even you will find those who are born as jati smara. There's those who are born, those who remember the past birth. It is always happens as a small child they remember. As they grow, they forget. Why? As a small child, the immediate concerns are not there. The mind is not having any immediate responsibilities. That's why it can still regress to the past. As it starts growing, it becomes more and more engrossed with the present life. The past automatically gets as if uh, deleted. It's not deleted, it gets subdued, shadowed in the subconscious mind. So, that example which we were giving in the last class, suppose in the daytime you have closed all the windows, and through the projector you are projecting some video on the screen, and then suddenly someone comes, opens up the window. So the things which were visible in the screen is no more visible. Is it not there? It is still there, but the intensity of the daylight just shadows that what is being projected on the screen. Our subconscious mind is like that projector projecting something on the screen. It can be palpably visible if I can shut down the conscious mind. Our senses, our mind, if we can shut down, then it becomes like a dark room. It becomes palpably visible. It is not visible because the intense daylight is permeating the room now. Means my conscious mind is so active, I cannot remember the past. If I can follow that procedure, certain procedure, some yogic procedure, it can be remembered, and the yogis claim it is possible, it can be done. So we saw that, we were discussing that in the last class. And then we find that in the last class we just concluded the discussion with the concept, the Vedic concept of a real nature, after discussing the various tenets, by comparing it with the Abrahamic religions as well as with the biological notions. He comes to the conclusion that the Hindu believes, as we read out from the Swami Vivekananda's lecture, that he is a spirit. Him the sword cannot pierce, him the fire cannot burn, him the water cannot melt, him the air cannot dry. The Hindu believes that every soul is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but its center is located in the body, and that death means the change of the center from body to body. Nor is the soul bound by the conditions of matter. In its very essence, it is free, unbounded, holy, pure, and perfect. So we find Swami Vivekananda is actually quoting the Bhagavad Gita to just bring forth this idea of Vedanta. That achhedoyam, adhayoyam, akledya, ashosya evacha. It is beyond all sorts of mutations, transformations. The pure soul was, is, will be. Now, again, another question comes that if that is so, if the soul is perfect, that the thing which is perfect, ever perfect, how can it be imperfect? That we see, palpably see the dualities of life. We see the weaknesses of our mind, from where all those limitations, all those uh, propensities have developed if the soul is perfect. Now, here a wonderful idea comes in Vedanta. Friends, today we will take up that if you spend your energy to find out, all the religions exhausted their energy to find out how the perfect became imperfect. But we find a tremendous, what you say, deviation as per in this matter is concerned in the Vedic religion and all the religions which evolved from the Vedic religion. Though they are not following the Vedas, but in a certain way they have evolved from that, from the Vedic tradition, the Buddhism, the Jainism. There you will find they are more concerned with the future of the soul, not the past of the soul. That through our spiritual practices, we can go to a realization where we realize that we are perfect. It is out of ignorance we were thinking of all those dualities. And from that they conclude it is from that perfection we came. If I find that all the dross can be removed, and in essence, I cannot be sinner in essence. Why? Why cannot be a sinner in essence? Because anything which you are in essence can never be removed. Even we find in the biblical tradition, it is believed that we can get rid of our sins. So if you can get rid of our sin, how can it be essence? The essence of a thing can never be removed. Only the thing which adheres to the essence, that can be removed. So we all believe that we can go beyond all the imperfections. So that cannot be the essence. We are perfect. So then the question comes, how the perfect become the imperfect? So here, Vedanta is not ready to simply go on scratching his head to find out why the perfect become imperfect and waste his energy. So there's simple, plain answer of Vedanta, as well as other religions like Buddhism. We find the simple answer is we don't know. Let us read out the words of Swami Vivekananda. It has a very, very deep significance in the religious tradition, the idea of ignorance. It saves us from wasting our energy unnecessarily in certain thing which we can never find out. And instead we use our energy to come out from that situation. Before reading that Swamiji's words, I will just give an example which Buddha used to preach. Now, when someone came and asked Buddha that whether God is, he kept silent. That's a wonderful thing in Buddha's life. We find that as Buddha never spoke of God, many things he is atheist. But very interesting. When you ask Buddha whether God is, he is silent. But we forget when someone asks whether God is not, then also he is silent. This is the point which we miss. He is not in any way interested about to speak about God, whether it is or is not, he is silent. In the life of Buddha, we find a person came to ask Buddha whether God is, he was silent, whether he is not, Again he's silent. Then person was first frustrated, found no answer from Buddha, left. And then Ananda, Buddha's disciple, is asking Buddha, why don't you answer? Either yes or no, something you answer. Why you just keep us confused? And then what Buddha told is very interesting. He told that I never preach any doctrine. I never preach any ism. What I do is teach mankind the way out. My teachings are actually an indicator. It doesn't speak of anything means what is being indicated. And it's just indicating. If you follow the index, you reach the goal. And then you yourself realize what the ultimate reality is. Till you have tested the mango, it is impossible to explain you the taste of mango through words. However you try. You may go on for explaining the taste of mango for years together. It is impossible to understand the taste of mango unless you've tasted. So unless you reach that state, whether God is or is not, to speak about it is futile. So I never speak of it. But I show a way. The problem is people take the way to be the ism. And that creates all the confusion. And they say, I am atheist. And all sorts of these notions comes because they take the way to be the ultimate reality. And then he gives a wonderful example. What he says, that is the mother is trying to show the moon to his infant. The infant who is always in the mother's lap is yet to learn to walk. She's always in the mother's lap, totally dependent on the mother. The mother now makes it a point to show the moon to the child. One day in the full moon night, the mother takes out the child and points with her finger to the moon and says, see, my child, that's the moon. And the child continues to look at the mother's face. Then the mother gets hold of the chin of the child, turns it, and tries to get its focus on the tip of the index finger. See, there. And at last the mother finds it is almost impossible to show the moon to the child. The child is so much attached to the person, to the mother. It cannot just transcend the person. If the mother with all her attempt at last finds the child is looking at the index finger, thinking it to be the moon. That's what happens with all the divine incarnations. They are actually an indicator. But at last, we take the indicator, the index itself as the final goal. And we never try to just reach the way, but we just adopt the way and reach the same goal. And that's why we find that all the avatars at last becomes the matter object of worship. It's not bad. But the problem is that we ourselves don't internalize the things, the values, the practices for which they were actually born, for which they were born. We don't take those things. Just a faith develops on that person. And that's what Buddha is saying, a nice way. That I'm just showing the way, and they take the way to be the goal. And then he says a very interesting thing. Then Ananda asks, but unless you have an idea of the ultimate goal, how can the people be motivated to really pursue that? Then again, Buddha gives a wonderful analogy. What he says is very interesting. He's saying, suppose you're passing through a forest, and from nowhere, an arrow comes and pierces you. And most probably the arrow is poisoned. Unless you get rid of the arrow and apply antidote, most probably you're going to die. Now, what's your duty? Would you sit down and ponder who shot the arrow? Why he shot the arrow? What poison he used? By the time you just go on pondering, you will be dead. If the arrow has shot you, your immediate concern is to get rid of the arrow and apply antidote. So, from where this imperfection came, how I was pierced by sin, you just go on pondering, it is in no way going to save you. Somehow get rid of the arrow, apply antidote, and save yourself. So now you will find how the concept of ignorance came in Vedanta, Agyana, that we don't know. There we stop. We don't proceed further to analyze how it happened. Just the way when you are dreaming, you take the dream to be real. When you wake up, then you know that it was a dream. Do you ever ask when the dream started, why the dream started? Once you know it was a dream, the dream has no importance to you. So just the same way the dream has no adi, I cannot decipher when it started, but it is anta, it has an anta, it ends. I wake up and then I realize it's a dream. Then what's the use? If it's a dream, what's the use to go on analyzing? So that's the idea in Vedanta. Then don't waste your time. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that very interesting thing is to say that if you are in a dark room for say 100 years, you are enclosed there. Now, what's the way to get the light? If you just go on pondering on darkness, is the darkness going to vanish? No. Somehow you have to bring light, and immediately the darkness will vanish. It won't take another 1,000 years for the darkness to vanish. That as I was in the darkness for 100 years, it won't take another 100 years for the darkness to vanish. Just strike the match, immediately the darkness vanish. Suppose you were in a cave, light has never entered for millions of years. When we used to go to the Jenelong caves in New South Wales, so the guide will say, for millions of years, no light entered. And then in the 19th century, one of the explorers entered the cave, the pitch dark cave, lighted a candle. Did it take another million years to light that cave? Immediately. That millions years of darkness vanished just in a flash. So the spiritual endeavor should be not to just go on pondering over the origin. Somehow we are here. We don't know. As long as we are in ignorance, it is impossible to understand how we are in ignorance. But there is a way out. And once you're out, then you find, oh, I was always perfect. Just the man who is dreaming knows that before dream, that dream was something which is an illusion. He is the same person who, after waking up, he finds that I am the same person who was before the sleep. Before going to sleep, the same person is this person. Nothing has changed. It was just a dream. Similarly, a man of realization knows that I am what I am. For the time being, somehow this delusion of imperfection came. Why to go on pondering over it? Get rid of it and have your endeavor to get rid of it, to go out of it. So now you will understand that how this wonderful concept of ignorance came. It's not evading the question by saying I don't know, or neither we are trying to just cover up that question with all poetical ideas. Just accept the fact that it is, and there it ends. Now let us try to be somehow, we are in this situation to go out of it. So in the words of Swami Vivekananda, how nicely he is explaining the Vedic concept of ajnana or ignorance, that why should the free, the perfect and pure being be thus under the thraldom of matter, in the words of Swami Vivekananda? And he himself answers, how can the perfect become the quasi-perfect? How can the pure, the absolute change even a microscopic particle of its nature? But the Hindu is sincere. He does not want to take shelter under sophistry. He is brave enough to face the question in a manly fashion, and his answer is, I do not know. I do not know how the perfect being, the soul, came to think of itself as imperfect, as joined to and conditioned by matter. But the fact is a fact for all that. It is a fact in everybody's consciousness that one thinks of oneself as the body, The Hindu does not attempt to explain why one thinks one is the body. The answer uh, that it is the will of God is no explanation. This is nothing more than what the Hindu says, I do not know. That is ignorance of Gyan. How it happened, we don't know, but there's an end of it. So Agyana means Anadi. I cannot find out, trace its origin, but it can be ended, and we are interested about that. So that's the wonderful way. Again, Swamiji is pointing, highlighting the Vedic idea of ignorance in comparison to the idea of the original sin in the Abrahamic religion. So again, we are saying it is not criticism. When you are discussing a particular religion, it's not to criticize others. Now, to bring out the points, you are having the other religions in the background. You know, this, our human mind is a wonderful thing. You can use it to uh, bring out your judgment in any way. It's this, what the way the Swamiji says is not the final. Even for the Abrahamic point of views, there are many ways to point out their view also. That's a very nice thing Shankaracharya says. After expounding Vedanta, he just, through judgments, he just denied all other philosophies, isms, and established Advaita Vedanta. After doing that, what a tremendous humility, with a humility is saying. In those days, no one was there to contradict him. But he's saying a wonderful thing. Yes, there may be someone of higher intellect to contradict my views. But one thing cannot be contradicted, that is realization. So before, yeah, as long as you have not eaten mango, you have not tasted mango, all sorts of views can be there about it. But the moment you taste the mango, the only thing which we will find is that the person who have tasted, he has become silent. He is no more arguing, because the realization is such a thing that all argue stop. The conviction comes. Who argues? The one who doesn't have the conviction. The one who is convinced. There is no question of argument. So Shankaracharya, how nicely is pointing out that after all this arguments, though I find that Advaita Vedanta is established, but know it for certain, the only certitude of this view is the realization. Through spiritual practice, once you realize, so then only that alone is the proof of the truth. So now we will find that the Hindus are not keen to exhaust their energy in finding out the cause of imperfections, but is interested to find the way out. And how it happens? That Vedic concept that just we have discussing, that it happens by the annihilation of the Ajnana. Now, what's the path to liberation? What's the way out? That this Ajnana is there. It's a palpable fact. How to get rid of it? The path to liberation, now in the words of Swami Vivekananda, the present is determined by our past actions, and the future by the present. The soul will go on evolving up or reverting back from birth to birth and death to death. But here is another question. Is man a tiny boat in a tempest, raised one moment on the foamy crest of a billow and dashed down into a yawning chasm the next, rolling to and fro at the mercy of good and bad actions, a powerless, helpless wreck in an ever raging, ever rushing, uncompromising current of cause and effect? The heart sings at the idea. Is there no hope? Is there no escape? Was the cry that went up from the bottom of the heart of despair. It reached the throne of mercy, and words of hope and consolation came down and inspired a Vedic sage, and he stood up before the world and in a trumpet voice proclaimed the glad tidings. Hear, ye children of immortal bliss. I have found the ancient one who is beyond all darkness, all delusion. Knowing him alone, you shall be saved from death over again. this Amritasya Putraha. Aedhamani Vidyani Tastu Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam Adityavarnam Tamasa Parastat Tame Viditva Atimrityu Meti Nanya Pantha Vidyate Yanaya. So this Swamiji is actually quoting from the Vedas. So it's a wonderful idea that you are not the sinner. You're the children of the immortal bliss. The next Swamiji says that you're the children of immortal bliss. What a sweet, what a hopeful name. Allow me to call you, brethren, by that sweet name, heirs of immortal bliss. Here, the Hindu refuses to call you sinners. Here, the children of God, the sharers of immortal bliss, holy and perfect beings. Ye divinities on earth, sinners, it's a sin to call a man so. What wonderful poetry Swamiji is creating. It is sin to call a man a sinner. So how nicely he's just as if ramming on the idea of the sin. It is a sin to call a man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. Your souls immortal, spirits free, blessed, and eternal. Ye are not matter, ye are not bodies. Matter is your servant, not you the servant of matter. So after this, you find that Swamiji is proclaiming the inherent purity of the soul, that sin cannot be our origin. In another place, Swamiji is saying a very interesting thing, that you say that sin, that original sin, that we have inherited that sin. And Swamiji is saying that before that particular incident, when Adam and Eve transgressed God, what were they? Why you start from that incident? Before that, it's not that Adam and Eve originated from that sin. They were there before that sin. They were perfect. And this one act of disobedience, this one act of disobedience cannot be the thing by which you can define them. They were perfect. If you have to go to the origin, why you stop with the transgression? They were eternally perfect, residing with God. Why not go there and assert the purity of the soul? That somehow a particular act cannot be the thing which defines me. Just it has a wonderful implications, that even when we are dealing with a child, the child is growing up, it does something silly, it does some acts which cannot be applauded, and you go and say you are a silly fellow. That's one way of saying. And another way of saying is, you are such a nice fellow. How can you do such a silly act? The same thing, for the same thing, you are saying two different things. What happens if you say you are a silly fellow, as you are ascribing that silliness to the child as its essence, and the child really becomes silly? The way you treat with a person, that what he becomes. If you just treat him just in a way that what he is supposed to be, he will become that. Just treat a person what you aim of that person, what you think of that person that he or she should be. He will become that. That is the inherent goodness. He has somehow committed one small silly thing, but that doesn't define him. So you will find that these ideas have something to do with our day-to-day life. If a criminal, you say you have no hope, and just throw him in the jail for the life long to be just rot there, you will find they become something like a very unchangeable criminals. If somehow they can escape, you will find they can commit any type of crime, because all hope has been just taken away from him or her. If we just say that yes, there is a chance of rehabilitation, that hope that what you have done, that can be nullified, you can transform, the inherent goodness is in you. Most probably the environment was not proper for you to manifest that. There's just a way that our inherent purity is like a seed. A seed has the inherent capacity to become a huge tree, but most probably because it was in a dry place, it dried out. Or it was in a place where there was too much of water, it was rotten. The rotten seed, the dried seed, is not an expression of evil. It is just the expression of the fact the inherent potentiality couldn't be manifested because of the lack of proper environment. It had that potentiality. So these two viewpoints can just speak a remarkable difference in the way we take our life. And that's what Swamiji is saying. That if you have to assert that inherent purity, and that will give you the confidence, that will give you the strength to move on, to get rid of all the things which has adhered to you because of ignorance. So thus we see Swami Vivekananda on his way to expound the Vedic concept of mukti or liberation is rebelling against the idea of the human beings as sinners. That which can be washed off cannot be our nature. It is just the dirt of ignorance which has covered our divine nature. Clean it, the soul shines forth in its pristine, pure nature. Now, how the dirt of ignorance can be washed off. So, in this context, we will find Vivekananda again. He's a prophet of synthesis. Again and again, he's synthesizing. He will synthesize bhakti yoga with the karma. It's not that he's doing it, he's highlighting it is there in our scriptures. For that, he's going to the Bhagavad Gita. This doctrine of love in his words. This is the doctrine of love declared in the Vedas, and it is fully developed and taught by Krishna, whom the Hindus believe to have been God incarnate on earth. So what he taught? He taught that a man ought to live in this world like a lotus leaf, which grows in water but is never moistened by water. So a man ought to live in the world. This how this bhakti and karma is in a single phrase, how nicely he's combining his heart to God, his hands to work. Yes, see, his heart to God. The entire Bhagavad Gita can be understood by this simple phrase: heart to God, hands to work. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, as long as you have the responsibilities, with one hand you take care of the responsibilities, with the other hand hold on to God. And when the chance permits you, when the opportunity comes, when you are relaxed from your responsibilities, you have already taken care. Now with both the hands you hold on to God. So how nicely this bhakti and karma is being synthesized by the simple words. It is already there in our scriptures. They're bringing out and highlighting them in the simple words. So that's the way out which Swami is speaking. That God, that's always think of God while you are taking care of the responsibilities. That again and again we say that we are just a mere instrument in the hands of the divine. We don't know how the thing which is noumenon, which is beyond phenomenon, has become phenomenon. We don't know. But at the same time, once it becomes a phenomenon, it follows certain laws, certain rhythm. And one of the laws is to integrate his nature. He has given us love, compassion. All the good traits which is in my heart is not something which I owe. It is already implanted by the divine. I am just the instrument in the hand of the divine to take care of his creation. So through me, all the actions which are issuing is actually to take care of the divine plan. I'm just an instrument. So I always keep my mind to God. And I just always remember, I'm just an instrument who is doing the God's work. I'm the channel through which the God's love is flowing. Then what happens? The expectation doesn't come. But at the same time, the mind is always surrendered to the Lord. So this is the very center, that's what Swamiji is saying, this is the very center, the very vital conception of Hinduism. The Hindu does not want to live upon words and theories. If there are existences beyond the ordinary sensuous existence, he wants to come face to face with them. If there is a soul in him, which is not matter, if there is an all-merciful universal soul, he will go to him direct. He must see him, that realization. And that alone can destroy all doubts. So, the best proof a Hindu sage gives about the soul, about God, is I have seen soul, I have seen God, and that is the only condition of perfection. The Hindu religion does not consist in struggles and attempts to believe a certain doctrine and dogma. This is again this important thing. Religion doesn't lie in believing in certain doctrine and dogma, adhering to it. It lies in realization. If anyone is truly religious, it's the mystics of all the religious traditions. They were not satisfied with the beliefs and the doctrines. They delved deep into the spiritual domain and came up with the realization. And there we will find they're all speaking alike. We always say that you say that all the religions have the same goal. It's how can it be? Just see that the mythologies, their uh, the concepts, the ideas are so varied. The idea of heaven is so varied. The idea of the ultimate spiritual goal is so varied. How can you say all the religions speaks of the same goal? Well, as long as we are just limiting ourselves within the doctrines and dogmas, we can never find the common goal. Read the life of the mystics, go to their teachings, and there you will find as their realization was something not adhering to the doctrines and dogmas, they were branded as heretics. They were persecuted. Why? Because their words sometimes were not telling with the doctrines and dogmas. But if you just try to find out the sayings, the life and the sayings of all the mystics of all the religious traditions, in the words of Ramakrishna, you will find there all the fox howls in same manner. They're all speaking the same thing. They're speaking of that unity of experience. So that's the thing which Vedanta stresses. Go to the realization. Don't just be uh, limited. Just don't be a frog in the well, thinking that these doctrines and dogmas all the be all and L all of the entire existence. We become just like a frog in a well, which has never seen the world and thinks the well to be the entire existence. So that's the Swamiji is saying. Go to the world of realization. There's the whole object of the system is by constant struggle to become perfect, to become divine, to reach God and see God. And this reaching God, seeing God, becoming perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect, constitutes the religion of the Hindus. In fact, it was a very forceful lecture. He's bringing out the point in a way where he's not contradicting the religions, but is pointing out the tenets of the other religion in a very nice way. You will find that he is perfect as his Father in the heaven is perfect. That, as we were saying, if you have to find your origin with Adam and Eve, why you stop with the original sin? They were perfect with their Father residing in the heaven before that. Why don't you trace back there? So you are that eternal perfect. I have to go back again to that eternal perfection. I am not going to harp on sins. So now Swami Vivekananda puts forward the question. What's the question? And what becomes of a man when he attains perfection? So there again, we will find a significant point in Vedanta, in yoga, in Vedanta, that in all the religions, the idea of the ultimate perfection is in heaven. That if I can lead a very nice life, then after death, I will go to that idea of perfection which I have, that heaven. In Vedanta, in yoga, there's a concept of Jivan Mukti, that you need not have to wait till your death to go to that realm of perfection. Here, in this very life, Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti Hetave Janmadharana. To enjoy the bliss of liberation is the purpose of the human birth, as the scriptures have said. It asserts that fact. Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti. That to be free while living. What's the idea of freedom while living? Yes, while living, we can enjoy the freedom. As Swami Vivekananda gives a wonderful example in some other place, that He was passing through the desert as a wandering monk. He was thirsty and in search of water. Suddenly he saw a huge reservoir at a distance. He started moving towards it. And he found after some time the reservoir is no more there, it's vanished. And then that idea came, oh, it's a mirage. I have studied about it. I had a conceptual knowledge about it. But today I realized. Till now I thought I know what mirage is. But today I really understood. It's no more a concept. Now what happens? The next day, when I'm again passing through the desert, I am just as a wandering monk, I'm passing through the desert. As I am still in my body, mind, senses, I haven't died. I'm still living in this body, mind, senses. So what happens? Again, I see the mirage. The same delusion because of the body, mind, senses again appears. But today there's a great difference. What's the difference? Yesterday I was dragged by it because it was something real to me. Today it has lost the hold. It has lost the power to drag me. I know it's a mere projection. This is the state of Jivan Mukti. That though you're living, your past actions now forces you to continue with your life. That realization doesn't mean immediate annihilation. Just to give an example, when the fan is revolving, you go and switch off the fan. Does it stop immediately? Because of the past, its past inertia of motion, the past impulse, it continues to move on for some time. Similarly, when we get detached because of our realization that this world which I was thinking real and I was so attached to it, it's after all a mere projection, the detachment comes. That doesn't mean your body will fall off immediately. Just like the past impulse of the fan, the past samskaras just enables you to continue your body, forces to continue your body for till the prarabdha is over, till that that force behind it is over, the force of the karma is over. But you are already free. Though you are continuing in your body, mind, senses, you are now free. Nothing can now drag you because after all, you have seen the reality and this entire world is now just like a mere projection to you. It cannot in any way affect you. So that's the idea of Jivan Mukti. So what he's saying, that what happens to a man when he attains that perfection? He lives a life of bliss infinite. He enjoys infinite and perfect bliss, having obtained the only thing in which man ought to have pleasure, namely God, and enjoys the bliss with God. So that has become the palpable reality. The projection has fallen off. He remains in the eternal bliss with the divine. And after that, he will come to the synthesis of Dvaita and Advaita hereafter. Uh, by finding out the nature of the ultimate realization, and he will synthesize the Dvaita and Advaita. So how he's doing, we will just take 5 more minutes. We will read Swamiji's ideas and then we will conclude this discussion. And again, we will continue with the Karma Yoga in the next class. So far, all the Hindus are agreed. This is the common religion of all the sects of India. But then perfection is absolute. And the absolute cannot be 2 or 3. It cannot have any qualities. It cannot be an individual. And so, when a soul becomes perfect and absolute, it must become one with Brahman. And it would only realize the Lord as the perfection, the reality of its own nature, and the existence absolute, the knowledge absolute, and bliss absolute. We have often and often read this called the losing of individuality and becoming a stock or a stone. So the world, at present, the real world is the stimulus to which we respond. If the reality is no more there, if it is a mere projection, our response won't be there. So what's the difference between a log wood, a stone, and such a person? Is it evolution or is it regressing back to matter? Many may criticize Vedanta that way. So here Swamiji is bringing that point. And he, in some other place, has told a very interesting thing. In this world, opposite poles always look alike. Though there's a marked difference, but they look alike. You cannot see the ultraviolet light which burns your skin, which creates skin cancer, and you cannot see the infrared light. They're poles apart, but both are invisible. You cannot hear the what you say, the supersonic sound, and you cannot hear the subsonic sound. The supersonic sound, which can even where a supersonic plane is passing over your building, it can even rattle the glass and it can break the glasses, but you cannot hear them. But and the subsonic sound, you can also hear them. These are the two poles. Similarly, a realized soul may look like a jada, inert, and a stone is also jada, but they are pole apart. What is the pole? What is the appearance may be same, but inwardly the stone is have no realization. But the man who have went to that spiritual realization is enjoying tremendous bliss. Why? Because the locality has fallen off. With this, we will stop our discussion. That what his Swamiji is saying is, I tell you, it is nothing of that kind, that you don't become like a rock and stone. If it is happiness to enjoy the consciousness of this small body, it must be greater happiness to enjoy the consciousness of two bodies. The measure of happiness increasing with the consciousness of an increasing number of bodies, the aim, the ultimate of happiness being reached when it would become a universal consciousness. To understand this, let us take an idea of the disease. When we say we are diseased, now when we are in good health, we are not aware of any particular part of our body, isn't it? The health of a child, you will see the health is throbbing through the entire body. It falls, it gets cut, it is not aware. So much of energy. The mother finds that there is a cut. They ask the child, when you have fallen, from where you got that cut? His so much health is there. He's just, what you say, that totally just throbbing with life force. That consciousness is throughout the body. It gets no chance to get localized. As we grow old, what happens? Now the consciousness is getting localized. What's the sign of disease? I have an headache. As a child, the consciousness which was pervading my entire body, life force was throbbing through the entire body. Now it is getting localized. It's my headache into the head. My heart ache. Knees are paining. Stomach is paining. That's the sign of disease. The consciousness which was supposed to be throbbing through the entire body now is getting localized. We, as the unity of consciousness, as the absolute consciousness, is non-local. The moment it gets localized within this body-mind complex, it is the disease of called worldliness. Through the realization, again, that localization gets diffused. It's not like a stone which is totally beyond all alertness. It's one whose consciousness has no locality. So the question of hatred, the question of animosity falls off. There is no localized. That a rock never reacts. A realized soul never reacts. What's the difference? A rock never reacts because it never feels. But a realized soul never reacts because to whom it will react. In Bhagavatam, a very nice example is given. While taking food, when accidentally your tongue is bitten by your teeth, whom do you blame? Because you are the teeth, you are the tongue. So there you are not reacting. A man who is not reacting while taking food when his tongue gets bitten by his own teeth, that non-reaction and the non-reaction of a stone, are they the same? They may look alike, but they're poles apart. So man of realization, as he loses his all the sense of locality, there's no boundary to his amness, his all pervading, has become one with the entire existence. That's the destiny of the soul. It was out of worldliness I got localized. It has been broken by that realization. And then alone, you can enjoy the infinite bliss. And then alone, you can realize that why Jesus in the cross is not reacting. He's forgiving all because he knows that other dimension of existence, where this is just a passing phase. This local consciousness is not the be all and end all of existence. Nothing can alienate him. He's one with the God. He was, he is, he's always one with God. And that's the thing. That's why Swamiji again and again is saying, for us to believe in Jesus becomes more easy from the Vedantic perspective. He's saying again and again, I believe in Jesus, but from the Vedantic perspective. So there's a difference between that the so-called Christianity and Christ. Sometimes Christ can be understood from the Vedantic perspective in a totally different way. And we can also adore him, love him from that Vedantic perspective. And that's what his life is, a wonderful life. So that's the thing we find Swamiji is gradually building up and is bringing to that Advaitic realization, that ultimate realization as the ultimate goal, which our spiritual journey takes us through all the so-called bhakti, karma, jnana, and at last it ends in that jnana, in that realization, where we experience that unitary consciousness, which is beyond all the boundaries, that all-pervading non-dual consciousness, of which in where we are all one. So that way Swamiji find he's just resorting to the Vedantic ideas to explain the nature and the destiny of the soul. His lecture is something very profound. Actually, we can take up that lecture itself as a subject of one of our retreats. It's a wonderful. In 3-4 sessions we can continue. But for the time being, with this idea that the nature of the soul, its destiny, we conclude the discussion today, and we will again continue with the study of the Karma Yoga from the next class. So thank you all for being in this session.
Namaskar, Swamiji. Thank you very much.
Pranam Maharaj, Pranam.
Pranam Dhanman Maharaj.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.